Okay, welcome back to the Applied Imperative podcast. This episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Brian Connolly, who is a lead machine learning engineer at Beehive Industries. Brian and I connected, I want to say 3-4 months ago now, through a former colleague of mine and somebody that Brian has got to know. And we just had a really great chat about things in general, state of the industry, AI, machine learning, etc. And we had a lot of synergy in how we saw things. And I said, hey, it'd be great to jump on a podcast and just get your thoughts about where all of this is headed. So it's a little bit tangential sometimes, maybe to what we typically talk about on the podcast, but we want to bring in different perspectives and have, just a good kind of fireside chat. So with that said, Brian, it's great to have you with me. Thanks for joining.
Thanks very much, Dale. I'm very happy to be here.
All right. Well, like I said, I wanted to go through a fairly wide range of topics. I mean, I'd like to touch on your academic and career history, maybe what you've seen with AI and machine learning, given you're kind of in that space. And, it obviously moved from a fringe topic to being front and center. And there's so much investment going into it now. And everybody, thinks you can solve the world's problems tomorrow, probably. And it's maybe, let's put a dose of reality into that maybe as we go through. Be great to get your perspective in terms of where things are headed, real world applications for AI and engineering maybe. And then you and I had some really interesting discussions around the impacts to society generally. Like if this really does manifest itself as this kind of superpower technology that we're inventing here, which all signs point to that. What does that mean for society? What does it mean for us as individuals? And you had some great perspective on that, so I'd like to touch on that. I have a great fascination with the acceleration of everything. I think we're in this most incredible of ages, incredible time to be alive, and we can touch on some of those elements maybe. What do you consume to get information? Where are you learning from? Who are you following? What are you listening to? That would be great, I think, for people to hear. And, maybe what's going to be sacred in the future, what things aren't going to change would also be another interesting subject. So with all of that said, why don't we start with just a quick history from you in terms of your academic and career history?
Sure. Yeah. So I did my master's and PhD at the University of Virginia. I studied aerospace engineering, and my research was on ingestion of sand and dust particles into helicopter engine inlets. So if you land your helicopter in the desert, do you damage your engine? And what kind of effects are there? So we had wind tunnels. We're doing computer simulations of those. I then moved on to Southwest Research Institute, where I studied exotic combustion, like hydrogen micromixers, supercritical CO2, direct fire combustion, all sorts of stuff, mostly focused on energy production, low carbon technologies. Did some work on hypersonics, on oil and gas downwell, on Martian meteorology, studying dust particles on Mars. So I've been very lucky to have a wide range of pretty interesting projects to work on. Right now, I'm at Beehive Industries. As you mentioned, we are doing additive metal manufacturing to make gas turbine engines. It's a very exciting place to work. I can't say very much about my job, except that it's very interesting.
That's fascinating. Kind of maybe a niche area it looks like to begin with, and then there's just so much, application and demand for some of that research and knowledge as you've gone through it. So, very cool stuff. Some interesting things you've been working on, I'm sure. Over and above those sort of technical skills and your academics and your career history, maybe even in the sort of soft skills area, what are those additional skills in addition to those technical ones that you've had to be able to learn or leverage, do you think, as you've gone through that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think computational fluid dynamics, CFD, is a great example. So I've never actually had issues with Siemens licensing, so I'm a big Siemens fan, but I can say with other CFD solvers and providers, there's a lot of difficulties getting them set up. So having to work with our IT team to set up a supercomputing cluster to solve fluid dynamics problems and work with management to get the money to provide all of that. That's a lot of different disciplines that all kind of converged, no pun intended. So I really have enjoyed cross-functional teams, working with a lot of different disciplines, working with people with very different perspectives. So for my background, it may look very narrowly technical or lots of very specific problems, but so often the solution has been bringing in experience from other areas.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into something I've observed in my career as well, which is, like you said, those cross-functional disciplines. I mean, more and more people are working in matrixed organizations or having to work with different departments, and being able to leverage the ability to get out of your silo, go and speak to somebody else in a different function, And even like, from a process perspective, from a business process workflow perspective, understand what it is we're trying to achieve at the top level, and then pulling all the different threads to make that happen. And when we talked earlier quickly about, what's not going to change, I think that's something that's not going to change. As we abstract away the technical details to run simulation, for example, or do design, what's not going to change is still your ability to paraphrase, what the product is trying to do, how we're going to get there, how it's going to operate in the field, how you're going to work with customers and vendors, suppliers, and other stakeholders to get that done. So it's a great way of framing it. Thanks.
Mhm.
From your perspective, given some of the machine learning elements as well, where do you see the state of the industry today? How powerful are these tools that are getting developed? Are there pain points? Will scaling laws hold from a? I know that's more of a sort of
Mhm.
GPT question, but where do you see all of this today, and where's it going? Do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I was working on artificial neural networks about 10 or 12 years ago, trying to do curve fits for our data.
Mhm,
More recently, I guess 6 years ago, GPT-2 released, OpenAI's earlier model, and I was thrilled with it in 2019 because it could do a choose your own adventure book, and you could actually choose your own adventure completely. So
mhm,
I've been following these large language models, again, from a personal hobby perspective for quite some time. And it turns out in 2023, when GPT-4 came out, an actual powerful
mhm,
conversational large language model (LLM), I said, "Oh, I think this is going to be part of my job too." These things are getting good enough that they can answer reasonably about complex aerospace problems. I've had it um, spit out seemingly reasonable answers
mhm,
for really, really technical questions about esoteric niche combustion stuff. So they're very smart. They fail in interesting ways. They are like humans in interesting ways. So I find it a very, very compelling area. Um, so that's been my more recent research in the last couple years. How can we apply AI to engineering problems? Where do they fail and where do they tend to succeed? And then what problems should we actually be applying them to? And which
mhm.
ones are best left to humans?
Yeah, great. Thanks. I was reading something earlier, actually today, that talked about how you could kind of compare AI to a toddler, to an infant, to a
Mhm.
certain extent. Like, you know, you can't, as you grow as a human, you can't talk until all of a sudden you can. You go from sort of consuming all this information, or you can't ride a bike until all of a sudden you can. And maybe there's going to be some of these moments, and for sure the models we have today can do certain things. There's hallucinatory effects. There's other problems with them. There's ethics. There's all these other areas of research that are being looked at. But maybe all of a sudden we'll have multiple kind of chat GPT moments that we've had, and we will solve for these things. And then all of a sudden the capacity and the power gets improved dramatically. In the meantime, there's still work to be done for sure. So, okay. If we were to project some of this forward, what do you think in 5 years, 10 years times this looks like, both from an industry perspective, like do you think, the speed of design or speed of simulation or whatever will be dramatically improved as a result of this? And then even societally, like it's very difficult to project, I guess. I mean, I read a lot. I know you've read a lot of similar books that I have, but where do you think all of this is heading?
Yeah. If I knew the answer with a lot of certainty, I would be on an island somewhere. But I can answer with low certainty
Hmm.
that things are going to be much more interesting than we think in many ways, and then much more boring. So we're still going to have failure modes. The computer is not going to do exactly what you want it to do.
Hmm.
But maybe that's on a task that's 10 times more complex than we're working on today. So I think there's a broad range of possible outcomes, and even the most mundane or least technologically advanced outcomes still involve wild gains from large language models handling low level cognitive tasks. So I think, again, even in conservative cases, we're going to see large changes into the nature of work and who is doing work and how over the next 10 years.
Hmm.
If we can really evolve large language models or develop, like you said, another ChatGPT moment or another few ChatGPT moments, we might see really large structural economic changes, but that's very, very hard to predict. And
Hmm.
I'll keep my estimations, again, more on the conservative side. I think we're going to see fundamental ways that work changes, but maybe it's not going to be able to answer your email perfectly still in 10 years. So it might not be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Great, great. Thanks for
Mhm.
summarizing that. One way or another, it's going to be interesting for sure. And I'm certainly looking forward to the journey. One thing, we'll put this on the screen as well as we're talking
Mm,
here, but there's a great graphic I like that shows how we're in the middle of this convergence of basically five kind of complementary technologies. AI is absolutely in the center of all of these and is acting as a flywheel, but you've got like energy storage and generation, robotics, nanotechnology, cryptocurrency, blockchain type effects, genomics and things like that. And all these technologies are coming together for the first time at this scale, really since things like the railways and the automobile and telephone systems and things like that converged. And there's a statistic that's quoted in this research that we'll cite, that says that I think it's 3 times the market cap, or maybe 5 times the market cap of the internet is going to be generated by the convergence of these technologies. So quite the profound era to live through. Like you say, I think it's going to be disruptive in many ways. Some things will stay the same in others, and there'll be frustrations and whole new industries built, and other things will collapse. So it's going to be fascinating for sure. In terms of information consumption, I mean, there's so much nowadays that you can get bombarded by. I think we all kind of need an AI to filter all of this information for us and give us a 5-minute summary every morning. But what do you consume? Are there certain podcasts you're listening to, certain books you've read recently that you'd recommend, people you're following on social media, any of those things that you could educate us on?
yeah, well, I am an avid listener of the Applied Imperative podcast, so that I have enjoyed your work very, very much.
Great.
I will say there is a lot of bad information out there.
Hmm.
I like to stay as grounded as possible. So, number one, most of the people I'm going to be referencing are professors, so it sounds a little boring, but it's very measured actually. So my favorite is Ethan Mollick, and
Mm.
I'll have links to these. But
Yeah.
Ethan Mollick is a Wharton professor, and he studies AI adoption from a business perspective. So how much faster was X task completed? How much more or less accurately was Y task done?
Mm.
Did participants using AI do better or worse than those without it or AI on its own? So he has a large number of blog posts that are very even handed. It's a great way to keep up with what's going on without getting lost in a hype cycle. So I love Ethan Mollick. Three Blue, One Brown by
Mm.
Grant Sanderson, a Harvard professor.
Mhm.
Great explainers for neural networks. I also like Max Lamparth. He's a safety researcher at Stanford. And then Anthropic themselves publish a lot of very good AI interpretability articles as well. So again, it skews academic, but I think that's where the fun stuff is.
Yeah.
But Ethan Mollick, if you have to read one, he's very readable, very accessible.
Awesome. I'm going to add that into my feed and my list. The three blue, one brown as well. He did the best explanation of a large language model and how it's constructed. Very graphical, all animated, and it was the most simplistic yet powerful explanation that I've ever seen about how they actually work. So, and I actually
Mhm.
posted that on my LinkedIn feed. So
Yeah,
totally
I
resonate with you there.
absolutely take a look at those videos and then know that the AI, like GPT-5, can create similar videos with that programming language. So his
Mm,
videos are all done programmatically. The
mm,
AI can make you your own if you like.
very cool. Okay, great. Part of the other conversation you and I had when we
Mhm.
first met was around how you're sort of personally preparing for this. Thinking about it from your family finances, your family situation. Again, what's going to be scarce, what's going to be abundant in the future. Anything you could share with us on that perspective?
Sure. Yeah. So from finance and career perspective, there are a lot of companies that have popped up in the last year or two that are selling a magical AI product or maybe a not even fully developed AI product, things like that. Um, that was an option, I guess, for me, but I haven't found um, uh, I, I really haven't found a good application that stand on its own. I think what Siemens is doing with integrating AI into their documentation and into their tools is a much more holistic approach. So that said, I don't think going out to become an AI consultant is in the cards for me,
Hmm.
but that is one option. Um, the stock market's doing very well. It's always a great idea to buy land. It's always a good idea to be prepared for things. So again, the future is going to be really interesting and maybe chaotic and turbulent, but it's also going to be boring in many ways too. So I think prepare for the future like you always have. Stay abreast of current technologies. Stay up to date with your job skills. Um, be aware of what's going around you and build community with your neighbors. but I don't think it's time to panic quite yet. I will
Mhm.
admit I was panicking a little bit in 2023. I've calmed down since then. The hype is not as real as I had thought.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, we can all relax here a little bit. And I would tend to agree with you. I think, Siemens have a fantastic approach to embedding AI into what I think is one of the most interesting and important aspects of AI in general. A chatbot is wonderful and can boost your productivity.
Mhm,
But for sure, having AI as part of the design, engineering, manufacturing, procurement, commissioning, testing phase for products just means we're going to continue to collapse the cycle time between an idea, product that the world needs, whether it's to decarbonize, explore space, go from point to point faster, more safely, whatever it is, and that product being a reality. So that's absolutely going to help. And Siemens is front and center with that, which is why it's so fascinating to me to be involved with it. Another area that I'm really quite fascinated with at the moment, you mentioned the stock market there, like
mhm,
these kind of social trading or being able to mirror
mm,
trade people that I mean, I was listening to a podcast some time ago. This is not financial advice at all, but it was a podcaster who was basically like an analyst in my pocket, kind of research grade, investment bank grade researcher, just giving his musings on the market and a particular stock, and would go through every angle, and kind of steel man the argument and throw different perspectives at it, would break all the numbers down. And I found it fascinating that I literally had access to somebody that was doing that level of research in my pocket. And nowadays, especially with some of the social apps that are coming up, you can mirror trade, without losing any money, just kind of copy what they're doing to see if they're working or not. They get rated, you can see what their success rate is, how much they've gained on their portfolio, etc. And the
mm,
democratization of that and access to stock markets and all the different markets that are coming online or on chain, private companies as well as public, is going to be really interesting to see how the financial landscape
mhm.
evolves over time as well. So,
There's an interesting dimension to that I wanna mention, and you'll notice that many of these chatbots, maybe fail in the same way, or they have similar opinions. So
mhm,
in some senses, the chatbots or the LLMs that are trained have some convergent properties, or they're trained similarly. What can happen is that when people ask them independent questions, you might ask Grok one question, and someone on the other side of the country is asking Claude another question, but they might give very similar answers.
mhm,
And when that comes to stock trading, you might see knock on effects of this quote unquote collusion because
mhm,
the LLMs think similarly. They arrive at the same answer independently.
mhm.
You might see some sort of effects in the market from chatbots all thinking a certain investment is a good idea.
Right.
So you think about things like the flash crash and the peculiarities that arose when algorithmic trading came to the fore. If you have now a significant number of financial services company relying on ChatGPT, and especially a lot of them are buying Anthropic products, are there going to be knock-on effects where all the LLMs agree this is a surefire investment?
Yeah.
There's interesting second-order effects at
That
play.
yeah, that's a very good point. You look at meme stocks and things like that over recent
Mhm,
years as well, right? So there's momentum that builds, and all of a sudden everybody piles in, but then you got to be out of the exit before it comes down heavily on the other side as well. So yeah,
mhm,
it's going to be interesting to see how these things move markets. It could generate as much volatility as it generates return. So it'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on for sure. Well, Brian, I know you're a busy person, so I want to thank you again for spending the time to just go through some of your thoughts and how you're seeing things here. I think as we said, we do live in the most fascinating of times, and all the best to you in your new role. And thanks again for taking the time to go through that with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dale. It's been a pleasure.